Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the January 27th, 2025 Planning Board meeting. If we could please first stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just want to make a quick announcement. Due to the special election of the county executive, February 10th planning board meeting will be held at the Albert A. Cappellini Community and Cultural Center in the Nutrition Room. And also, the T-Town Zoning Board referral was withdrawn from tonight's agenda by the applicant and will not be discussed tonight. We plan to come to the next meeting instead. Okay, I'm gonna start out with correspondence. Anything anybody wants to discuss?
No,
No.
nothing.
Counselor?
I have no new topics.
Okay. John?
Nothing here.
Okay, we'll move on to the meeting minutes of January 13th, 2025. Any additions, alterations, corrections?
None here. Nope.
Counselor?
None.
Good. John?
No, nothing here.
Then do I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes of January 13th, 2025?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
I abstain.
That's right. First, in the regular portion of the meeting, we have Underhill Farms. This is a public hearing. Location is 370 Underhill Avenue. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
Motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So good evening to the board members, good evening to town staff. Mark Blanchard on behalf of the applicant. We're unfreezing a laptop, so we're gonna go out of order. I'm gonna start. One of the things I wanted to just address very quickly is since our last meeting, we've met with your council and your director of planning. We went over with council the concept that was mentioned here last time, how the condominium ownership and the commercial ownership are both going to be equal members of what's called a Property Owners Association, a POA. Wanted to just remind the board members that POAs are formed with a declaration, with articles of incorporation. They're formed under the not-for-profit law, corporations law in New York State. It's a legal entity. The easements, within the declaration that's going to be recorded, the condominium declaration and the POA declaration, the POA bylaws, we have shown the Director of Planning, Mr. Tegeter, that we're going to have a reference to the July 24 site plan resolution. We're going to have a reference to the subdivision resolution, should this be approved. Both of those references will be also included on the plat, the final plat that gets filed. And within those documents, we're going to have cross easements so that the parcel is treated as one parcel, meaning all the driveways are taken care of together, all the landscaping is taken care of together. The easements on the open space are going to be recorded. I have them now. I have the originals. They're out for recording. The open space easement, the emergency access easement benefiting Beaver Ridge, the utility easement, they're all being recorded. They all go first. Anything that happens with a subdivision, with a condominium, they're all beholden and subject to easements as we move forward. So the planning board's concern, rightfully so, that the property doesn't somehow split into two separate ownerships is alleviated, we believe, by this property owner association, by the recording of the easements, and by the cross easements being included in the declaration. At no time whatsoever will those two parcels, once subdivided, be able to act independently of each other. In perpetuity, they will be reliant upon each other. And all buyers will have that information provided to them prior to buying. So everyone's going to be on notice that in this great project, this is how this project is going to exist. So that's really the summary that I have. I don't know if Mr. Tegeter wants to add anything about our meeting, but I don't want to speak for you, but I believe that we have solved the town's concerns outside of this board, which you had asked us to do.
Don't go away.
Sure.
I think you made a very important point. I just want to make sure it's clear to everybody, that, you know, what the function of an easement is, how it works, and when you say it's, you know, paramount to anything else that goes on, maybe you can just talk about, you know, it runs with the land, it
Sure.
stays with the property. And the other question I had, I might as well give it to you. As the town board, as the grant, you know, the recipient of these easements on behalf of the public that we're benefiting here, have they approved and accepted them at
Yes.
this point?
Yes. So they have been approved and accepted. They are fully executed. They're in my possession for recording.
Okay, thank you. So,
And
what,
so go back. So that was
yeah,
the
go
second
back to
question.
the first one.
First
for us.
question, second. The easement is a recorded document. We go to the same place where we record our deeds. I know this is for the public, but
Yes.
you know, we go to the same office where we record our deeds, record our mortgages. We record easements in the same place. When we go to, we also file our subdivision plats there. So when we show one parcel that's now subdivided, and we show a map that shows the two parcels, the two tax lots, the two deeded ownerships, that gets filed there as well. The easement now gets filed first. Anything that happens subsequent to that, let's be specific. The easement for the open space area around the pond that's accessible to the public, that easement gets filed and now burdens that property for the rest of time. That's what we say, in perpetuity.
That's the, now he's got the green.
There, right there. I'm sorry, thank you.
Yeah.
So that easement, that is the exact map that it's accompanying our easement. That green space also has a numbered meets and bounds that a surveyor prepared. That gets recorded in the Westchester County Clerk Land Records Division, and that now lives in perpetuity and governs forever. That space is reserved as per the planning board requirements of its site plan resolution. That space is reserved for that particular use in perpetuity. Nothing, no subdivision line, no co-op, no condo, nothing supersedes that. That is the groundwork, the foundation upon which everything else rests.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John, do you want to add anything?
Well, I'll just add that I think what I have been saying all along is that the site plan approval that set in place how these future two properties will work, but currently this single property needs to be able to be in force and operational regardless of whether this is a single owner or there's two owners. So that's the first thing that I think, I don't think anybody disagrees. I don't think we've had any disagreement on that. The POA, some of the language I've seen is starting to speak to that, which is good. I find it to be a agreement between the two owners for a lot of reasons other than just adherence to the site plan. So I think that, as we've discussed, the site plan resolution and the plat should have adequate descriptive notes that detail that those two properties are still required to follow the site plan with references, et cetera. That actual language I don't think has been laid out yet or detailed, but that remains to be done. But to me, that's one of the more important things, that in all of the documents that relate to the property, site plan and the subdivisions reflect all of the duties and responsibilities of whoever's in ownership, whether it be one property or two. So if you look at the subdivision plat, you should understand what happened, how this planning board went forth and approved the subdivision, and that it's contingent upon, in some fashion, or that there's duties and responsibilities to the site plan. The resolution should reflect that.
Yes.
If the POA reflects that, then any document that you pick up, you should understand what was in force and what the intent of the planning board was and what their final approval of it was. So I know I'm being kind of pedantic about it, but we've seen over time when things come back years later, and it's difficult to find records, and some folks are not happy with what everyone believed for many years to be in force, and it becomes a difficulty. So think it's very important to have the records very clear and that there's a common thread throughout.
So who writes up the resolution to make sure that your points are included in there?
Well, we typically draft the resolution with the help of the legal department.
Okay,
The applicant certainly has ability to take a look at it and add or detract from it. And then you guys, of course, are the final say in the language and so forth. And of course, the notes that will go on the plat will be important language, and I think we should pay attention to those too and write them well in advance so we all know what we're doing.
And this again will be to ensure the future compliance and adherence to these
Yeah,
easements.
and clarity. Just clarity in the land records.
We have no objection to that, no objection to that at all.
For the benefit, good evening, Joseph Rena, the principal site design consultant. For the benefit of the public, I'll quickly explain our application. Our application is for the subdivision of this parcel, which has previously received site plan approval. We're creating 2 lots, outlined in the blue lines as shown on the screen there. 9.9 acres of the site will contain the townhouse portion of the development and the condominium portion of the development, which will be under one homeowners association. And the second small parcel, which would be about 3.9 acres, will house the proposed apartment building and the commercial space for the project. In no way does this subdivision affect anything that was approved as part of the site plan. All conditions of that are remaining the same. We're still able to comply with the bulk standards individually for each lot. And previously I had brought up a slide that showed where the open space that's going to remain, and Mark explained that. In addition to the open space easement, there's also an access easement, common access easement to Beaver Ridge, which will be preserved also. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer those, and if Mark has anything else you'd like to add.
are there any site plan modifications in connection with this application that you want
Not-
to talk about, or
Not with the application, the subdivision, we are proposing amending the original site plan, but that's not a subject to this application.
That's not part of this application
That's right.
tonight? Okay.
That's right.
Any questions from the board?
None here.
Anything else with your presentation?
No, nothing further from me either.
Okay, this is a public hearing, so we'll open it up. If anybody would like to speak, just come up and please state your name for the record.
Good evening, Jay Kopstein. I've been informed this evening that some of my comments may not be accurate. I'm not sure, but I'm going to say them anyway, and we'll see what happens. At the planning board meeting of December 23rd, counsel for the developer of Underhill Farms again addressed the planning board and requested another revision to the approved site plan and a request to subdivide the property. I understand that sometimes there is a need to make simple and insignificant modifications to a site plan. I am not happy with the addition of more housing units and the relocation of parking spaces, but I understand it. I am opposed to the elimination of the wooden footbridge with the replacement of a culvert. This change will impact on the ambiance of the public access area. At the current time, I am opposed to the requested subdivision. This subdivision could have a significant impact on the public access area of this private property development. Who will maintain the public access area an actual access route. I know the developer says that the homeowners or property owners association will, but what if they do not? Will the town sue the homeowners association and risk angering 200 or 300 voters? The town cannot enter upon private property to do maintenance unless a public nuisance is declared. The planning board should require that the developer submit rules and regulations for the public access area for approval. For example, access should mimic town parks. Monday through Sunday, sunrise through sunset. Closures only due to emergencies and maintenance, and then only with the approval of the superintendent of Parks and Recreation in writing. The dedicated parking for the public access area should be prohibited to owners and their guests, and so signed. Marked parking spaces in the public access area should be reserved for handicap parking permits and also so signed. It should be noted that the New York State Vehicle and Traffic Law specifically authorizes local law enforcement to issue summonses for violations of handicap parking, even on private property. The developer and the homeowners association should be made aware of this in writing. The town and planning boards and their underlying departments have spent and continue to spend hundreds of hours on this project. During the numerous work sessions and public hearings before the town and planning boards over numerous years, I do not recall a developer stating that the property would be subdivided. The planning board should refrain from granting the requested subdivision until all other requirements have been met and are in writing. During the public hearings, I spoke in favor of this development. Knowing what I know now, I would not have done so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Susan Siegel. I'd like to make it clear I'm speaking as a private citizen and not anything to do with my position on the planning board.
Town board.
Sorry about that. Yeah, town board. Okay. I think Mr. Blanchard has explained the open space easement. But I have concerns about even something like the stormwater, which you haven't mentioned, because the site plan has one stormwater plan that covers the entire 13 acres, all the different pieces, and they're all part of a major plan. Now you're subdividing it into two parcels, and I heard easements, the easements for utilities, and I don't know that that includes the stormwater, so this is a legal question that I don't know. But the pond is one of the key integral parts of the stormwater plan, and that's going to be owned by the condo homeowners association. And I just wonder, it would just make more sense, and especially since those condos will not be built, that's a phase 2 project, and we don't know when they will be built. In the meantime, that area will have to be maintained, which I assume it will still be the developer who will be the owner of the condo parcel. But would it make more sense, and I just throw this out, to redraw the subdivision line so that the developer is the one who's the owner of the pond and that open space area? I think it would be simpler, cleaner, neater if it was that, and then that developer dealt with all the public access plus the stormwater issues. And I'm just throwing this out as a suggestion, unless there's some reason why it should be subdivided, the way it is. Also, again, here's a legal question. A lot of this management of the open space plus the stormwater has to do with the POA. is there a reason why the planning board should wait before approving the subdivision to see more details of that POA agreement? I think this is a novel concept. To the best of my knowledge, I don't know that the town has ever dealt with a project like this, which was half and half. So we're charting new ground here. And since so much depends on that POA, should you wait? We have the concept of what the POA is going to be. I think there was possibly a reference that maybe the planning department has seen some potential language or more concepts, but should the planning board, which is the approval body, wait until it has a little bit more details? Because I don't know that there's any rush on this, since they're not planning to do a phase 2 that we're aware of. So these are just questions that I ask for you to consider, because I don't have the answers to this, so I don't have any opinion one way or the other. I just have questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the public?
Good evening.
How you
Good
doing?
evening.
Matt Talbert, Parks and Rec Commission Chairman. I want to just put out there the public access again and make sure that in perpetuity that the public access is always there. I don't know if you could do that with permanent signage, saying a public access area. Sometimes HOAs become very territorial, and they feel like it's all theirs, especially if they're paying for the repairs of the pond, maintenance of the pond. That's basically it, that the public access area is maintained and open to the public.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Counselor, anything?
We certainly understand the applicant's proposal and agree with it in principle, but absent receiving the proposed POA and the reciprocal easements and reviewing them and approving them, I would suggest that the board either issue a conditional approval or delay it until the time that we can approve those documents.
John?
I agree with that. We often do, most of our approvals have plenty of conditions. So I think that does make sense. I do think that the language in this case, whether it be the POA, some of the notes that should go on the plat and the resolution language are going to be pretty important, so I think they should be paid attention to. So.
Anything from the board?
I have picking up on what Susan said, I mean, yes, the subdivision line cuts across the open space area. It divides it into two pieces. And does that make it more difficult for us to manage it going forward, or as Susan suggested, put the whole open space on one side or the other, so that there's not two landowners that we have to deal with if there's problems with the access here? I'm just thinking out loud in terms
I
of,
could address that if you.
yeah,
Everything that's not a building, everything that's not a structure on that parcel, once it's subdivided, is going to be the obligation of the 2-member property owner association. So it doesn't matter, even if the pond is fully on one side, the other side will have obligations there as well. Like, for example, if the condominiums went bankrupt and the pond was fully on that side, the value to the town of the property owners association is that it then becomes the other member of the POA, the commercial side, to maintain that pond until such time the condominium is back in action. So whereas you would have where you would have one defunct landowner sort of on its own and the town having to come in and enforce, the town has an extra layer of protection here where you have a 2-member POA. So this subdivision, from a very practical standpoint, if we move the line, it goes back to what we're worried about with this site plan resolution and throws off lots of calculations, including FAR and things of that nature.
that's true.
Right. So our line is exactly, I hate to say it this way, but it's exactly where we need it to be. But you are protected because of the property owner association has obligations. The members pay dues into it. Someone fails to pay a due, it can be, they take an action against that member, becomes an enforceable legal judgment, just like it would for an HOA.
So what you're presenting then, you've got a situation where the land is split into two,
Yes,
and there are two owners, A and B,
yes.
but then they're coming back together again, not for the purposes of ownership of the two parcels, but for the purposes of a commonality on the easement piece.
They're
Yes.
coming together for legal obligations for
For that piece.
road maintenance. Yes, road maintenance, public access. The Commissioner of the Recreation asked for the clarification on public access. Both sides are obligated for that public access to maintain the public areas. They pay dues. They'll pay dues into one pot. Out of that pot, one guy gets hired to do snow plowing. There's one
Okay.
landscaping company. It's all, yeah.
So, in answer to the other comment that Susan raised, it doesn't matter that the condos aren't built yet because you still got the other part of the other party to that agreement who stands behind it.
Correct, exactly. And as far as, and that's kind of a nice segue into just, I hear council's point about what should we do. We're in a little bit of a chicken and an egg process here. We are asking you for the same thing we did for site plan, to condition our approval. We need the approval in order to take the next step in this process, and we're willing to come back to you, or we're not objecting to your requirement that we come back and show you the cross easements. We've even agreed to show you the draft declaration.
And the
Right.
POA?
The POA, we've agreed to show you that. But instead of we can't bring you those in the abstract. We have to, we need to undertake consecutive steps. For
Wait a minute, you can't put together the draft POA that you're gonna present at some point and say,
well, we can.
this is the language we're gonna include at a minimum?
We want that to happen. That has to happen once we have the subdivision and
Why?
we're moving forward with the condominium.
Why?
Well, because we might be 6 months away from having that POA, but we can't.
I'm
we
not
can't
saying,
file
I'm not
it.
saying you're gonna have a signed POA to present to us. You can say the POA is gonna take essentially this form and has this language in it. And we review that as part of our approval now. And then you go out and you do it later. You put it in paper, you have people sign it later on. Give me the form and substance of what you're talking
Well,
about.
look. If we do it that way, it gets us to the same place. The subdivision, we're not allowed to move forward. We're not allowed to record documents. We're not allowed to have
get it.
anything moving forward. If the developer is asking for the approval now, we need to have this approval in order to move forward on our next steps. And you're still getting approval of the POA. You're still getting to see that language.
What we can do is this, we can submit a copy of the POA as we submit to the Attorney General at the same time and say, if they request changes, then we have to make those changes. Okay?
I just want to make sure that we have the opportunity to implement the recommendations of our staff and our attorney in approving this. That's all.
We'll submit it to you at the same time we submit to the Attorney General, and then you can do your review and let us know. If you have comments, we'll make
The
changes.
POA?
What's that?
The POA?
Yeah,
Well, you can submit the draft though, right?
the draft.
POA.
We can submit it once we're ready to go to the Attorney General's office, yes.
I don't understand why you can't submit it now.
Because it's not ready. It's being prepared.
When do you think it'll be ready?
Probably 45 days.
But having us wait to do it doesn't increase your ability to see it. You're conditioning the approval. You have now we're obligated to show it to you.
But what impact do we have on it once all of that happens? I'm just asking.
We have to remain, but it's the same impact we have with complying with a site plan resolution. It implicates the certificates of occupancy. It implicates the use of the property. You have a condition that you have to approve the draft POAs as we move forward. We have to come
And
back.
okay, that's fine, and if the board says, hey, this language is insufficient, it really doesn't accomplish what you told us you were gonna do.
Absolutely.
Then what?
Well, then we have to change it, subject to your approval. It's a condition of your approval.
As long as we have that ability, then.
But then you would have to resubmit it to the Attorney General if we make changes.
Well, they're making changes too. That's a living document. We submit to the Attorney General a draft for their comments. And they would know that you have drafts as well. They would see in there that your approval, that the board's approval is another condition. Right, so they would see that as well. Plus, it would be on the signed plat, the final plat, there's gonna be a reference to the subdivision resolution and the original site plan resolution.
Would the planning board be able to see the Attorney General's changes in real
I
time?
don't see, yeah, I don't see why not.
Any concerns with what they're describing?
Your approval would be conditioned upon the town's approval of the POA, so they couldn't really act on the approval until the POA was executed.
Okay.
But it is cleaner to have all the documents submitted prior.
Well,
Listen, I'm
But-
not
but-
interested
yeah,
in
but
the
this is-
part.
but there's
let me
a
just
practical
say
aspect
something.
here in terms of
Let
how
me
we
just-
get
listen,
financing, how we move forward.
Wait. We're not interested in picking through an agreement that has nothing to do with the easement. Those sections of the property owner's agreement, which dealing with things not related to the easement, are purely private agreements between landowners which don't affect any of our concerns. So is it possible to extract the sections that are dealing with the maintenance of the common areas, present that to us, and we approve that section as part of our approval? We say, this language meets our goals. The rest of it, you can flesh out when you need to.
But that language, it's very inefficient to do it that way. Is it possible? Anything's possible, but it's incredibly inefficient to do it that way, because then you're going to have standalone paragraphs or a standalone section that's been reviewed, but that's not practical. We want to create a single document, show it to you, show it to the Attorney General. We're not doing this in the abstract. We need a subdivision in order for other things related to that development to move forward. That approval of the subdivision is conditioned here for us to come back. We're not objecting to any of that, right? We're not objecting to that, to have the documents when they're finished to come back to this board, when they're in final draft form, come back to this board. But to hold up the site plan application for those, for
But how
us,
does- how does
we're
it hold it up?
strongly urging you to do it.
Yeah, I don't understand the objection to submitting a draft if you have a draft.
We don't have a draft,
Okay.
but we want to have the subdivision plat finalized and done. That's a huge step forward for us with the draft comes out of that subdivision finalization.
The POA language, how will that prevent the subdivision plat from being finalized?
It's not that it's preventing the plat from being finalized. It's that the plat for us is a much needed next step. Out of that, the POA is no simple document. The condominium declaration, the condominium bylaws, the condominium rules and regulations, the property owners association, those are huge undertakings, huge documents. They're all going to be conditioned to come back here. To have this subdivision now wait for all of those documents to be completed, it doesn't move your goal, your final line where you get the same result at the end. It's a huge impact on us to delay this now and for all of those to be finished.
And I'm naive to a little
Sure.
bit what you're saying, and I appreciate you explaining that. But I think we don't understand why, the reason you need to get this first, the sequence of events that needs to take place that you're saying are going to prevent you from doing other things.
Sure. For example, when the subdivision is finalized,
Right.
now we have a finite area of acreage and square footage for the condominiums to move forward.
Okay.
Once we have that ability to show this is exactly, here's the meets and bounds, this is exactly where we have a final plat, the final plat's been filed upon this piece of property, Attorney General, this is where this declaration will rest. This is where this concept will rest. So for us, it's just in the terms of the order of how we're doing things, it's a huge step forward to have the creation of that finite piece of property.
All right, so if I understand what you just said. Once the subdivision is going through the process, you take the information from that document, that plan, and you add it to this agreement that goes to the Attorney General. So you need the
Yeah.
specifics.
Right, we need to show that we are in ownership of a piece of property in order to move forward with all the Attorney General
A
action.
divided piece of property.
I understand that. And I support what you're doing. I'm not opposed to the concept or the ultimate result. I just want to make sure that our interests are properly handled here. You know, I'm beginning to think that the conditional approval is probably okay if it gives us the ability to, hello? Hi. It gives us the ability to go through the documents and make sure that the representations you've been making are in there. That's all.
We have no objection to that. We have no objection to that level of review.
Okay, the only, I apologize for saying this, but this could have been done, your application to subdivide could have been done in tandem with the whole site plan process that we were going through. And, you know, the fact that you all of a sudden need it, I just don't want to make, I don't want that need to short circuit what we need to do, that's all. Okay,
Well, the explanation here just highlights that the subdivision plat and the easements as written and the resolution are going to govern what takes place here. Because if you're going to approve the subdivision without the POA, then I don't know why there's a description of the POA, how solid it is, if you can't see it.
right, I know.
So, in order to achieve what you need to achieve, you're going to have to rely on the subdivision plat, the resolution, and the easements in place. If the easements in place bear some amendment, then maybe they do.
So how do we move forward?
Well, I think we need to start concentrating on some of the language that's gonna go onto the plat, some of the language that would be in a resolution. I think we need to be vigilant and take another look at the easements and make sure that there's no other easements that are necessary pursuant to the subdivision. I don't think so. I think that's the next step.
So would we get ourselves in trouble if we close the hearing?
Well, I don't think you can close the hearing
No, you
because
don't.
there are some referrals that are still outstanding.
So do we adjourn?
Yeah, adjourn. I would adjourn.
Okay.
You right with that?
Oh, we were hoping to close it. I didn't know about the outstanding referrals, but.
Yeah, well, it came to light, and we have to keep it open for that reason.
All right.
Unfortunately.
What are the referrals? What were the open referrals?
Some of the secret referrals that we're required to do.
And they're not done yet.
They're not done yet.
Nothing you can do about that.
Maybe in the meantime, while the meeting remains open, we can continue to work with staff relating to language for the subdivision plat.
I would
Please, yeah,
expect
do
not
that.
much,
Well,
yes,
well, that's
yes.
the point, and I don't, you know, we don't have a draft resolution. We didn't anticipate that we would have closure on some of this stuff, which we don't. And so there is, you know, there's a parallel time now that I think will happen with the referrals and working on the details.
Can we help the applicant to move forward and get the wording on the plat and have you review it?
I think
That's
we
what we're
just
gonna
agreed to do that, yes.
Sit down.
Yeah, thank you.
No reason not to, yeah, go forward with that.
Right.
All right, I'll move to adjourn the hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Thank you.
All right. There's a motion to move into the work session.
Motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, first on the agenda, we have 401 East Main Street. This is a discussion of site plan. How you doing?
Good evening, hi. So I'm Brian Hildenbrand, the engineer for the project, joined by Rich McHale, the owner. We were last here in November for a discussion, and there were some questions and talk about the drainage on the property. So since then, we've submitted the SWIP. It has the sizing calculations for the review by the town engineer. And we also made a few other relatively minor revisions to the plan that were requested, dealing with the floodplain boundary, the off-site drainage ditch to the south. That was a topic. So I mean, we're here to hopefully make some progress in the process. Just as far as I know the stormwater was a sensitive topic. Based on the SWIP calculations we provided, not only are we meeting the existing conditions, but we're reducing the peak flows for the 1 year, 10-year, and the 100-year storm by using the rain garden and the infiltration system. So, I mean, the idea is not to impact any downstream neighbors or have any negative impacts on the lake. We are under review by the health department, and you know, we're keeping as much pressure as we can before they get mad at us, trying to get that reapproved, even though it was previously approved.
Dan? I saw Dan just come in. Dan, do you mind stepping up for a second?
Enough room?
So, have you had a chance to review the,
We just got the stuff today,
okay.
so, you know, we gotta review the SWIP and see what the approved health department plan looks like. So I'm in no position this evening to talk about this one.
Okay. But does it appear from first flush that it looks like
I mean, it looks like most of the stuff is there.
at least they got us the
But we'd
information?
wanna do a thorough review before we,
Okay. So we're gonna have to obviously wait to hear from Dan about his review, and I'm sure he'll get us a memo.
Well, I think they need to do the public hearing.
Oh, we didn't do that yet either, that's
I
right.
think you did the public
We did
informational,
the public information.
so you can set them up for that.
So, is it, and,
And we should do that.
yeah,
Yeah, the only things that I would like to talk about a little bit is, you may need a little bit more information in terms of landscaping. We can go through that in the interim with the applicant. We're gonna need, and maybe, I don't know if you have it yet, but there, you have some, it looks like you have some building lighting, exterior building lighting?
Yeah, and
Shown.
those cut sheets were submitted.
They were just submitted, okay. Can you get from the manufacturer the, you know, little lumen chart around them, which they throw out, or,
Yeah.
and apply it to the site plan?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can add
So
those.
things like that.
Okay.
And then I'm a little, like, you have a overhead door to access the floor, which is mostly storage and so forth, right? Is that a drop curb that you're showing there, or is that an apron? I'm not certain how that's working there.
Okay, we can clarify how the
Yeah,
drop works. It will be a drop.
yeah, I would appreciate that. Other than that, I think it's, you know, working through just some of the details like I just went through.
right. I do not have I got the 2024 calendar. When's the next possible meeting that we could? So can we be ready for a February 24th public hearing?
Yes.
Good?
Yes, you had mentioned something about the ornamentals and the lights. Is that something we need to review first before we just submit it and?
Yeah, just submit it to us, or if you want to go through it, you know, either online or at a meeting, we can do that, and then you can put the stuff together.
I would always suggest meeting with the professionals, iron everything out for the meeting. So any questions are fleshed out beforehand.
I got one question on the drawings. There's a purple line that cuts through the whole property towards the left. What is that line?
That's the FEMA 100-year
The floodplain? Okay, I don't believe it was, unless I missed the label, I didn't see that. Okay, thank you.
Oh, yeah, it's just, it's in the legend, but we can make that more clear.
Top left-hand corner.
Top left-hand corner.
All right, so we'll work out
Okay.
the details. Make sure you work with Robin and John. T's crossed, I's dotted, and we'll see you on the 28th for the hearing.
Okay.
All right?
Okay, I know.
Thank you very much,
Yeah.
guys.
Oh, it's on the third chart, the third drawing.
Third one?
Yeah, I see it now.
Oh, there it is up in the corner.
Thanks, Bob.
Aim to please.
I just looked at the first two, I didn't see it.
Next on the agenda, we have Jacob Road Solar. This is a discussion site plan, and special use permit. I would ask, before you guys get started, Sergio, is there any updates of where the board is headed with the moratorium?
I can't tell you. I can't tell you where the board is heading, but we did have quite a discussion at the last meeting. regarding the moratorium and regarding where we want to, where potential 4 different scenarios of where we might head, what direction we might head into. The discussion didn't really end definitively with anything, and several of us kind of had different opinions, strong opinions. I was one of them, I will tell you that. But so I'm not sure where we're going to head, what direction it's going to head in, but we're looking to move this forward and get a final answer and final potential criteria, that has to be met if a new law comes into play, comes into fruition, which is where the plan is to bring in, modify the law and make the necessary changes if once we can all find a middle ground.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Counselor, how are you?
Good to see everybody. Good evening. David Cooper, partner with the law firm of Zarin and Steinmetz, here representing the applicant, Freestone Renewables. With me is Ryan Hutchinson from Freestone Renewables, Nicholas Bombas from Labella, the project engineer, and my colleague Jacqueline Cohen. We are here tonight on a project update. Obviously we are still waiting for the town board to go through the process and see where the zoning ends up, and so some of the studies that the board has requested, like most importantly the updated visual studies, are still waiting to understand what the setback would be, what the regulations are going to be, because it's not worth sort of spinning wheels until we know. We are here tonight to answer some of the other questions that were raised that are more at a higher level that would apply regardless of where the zoning ends up. There were questions about benefits to the town, impacts, etc. We want to go through that in a bit of detail. We understand we'll probably be not much there's not a next step until we know where the zoning is tonight, but we wanted to go through that tonight and then answer any questions.
Excellent.
So the highlights.
That's all right.
Going through the highlights, where we started with our submission to your board is a fairly substantial submission, is from the posture of the question from a secret perspective, are there any significant adverse impacts that require a pause deck? There's a clear evidentiary evidentiary standard that this board and any lead agency in New York State has to follow with respect to whether or not a positive declaration is warranted, and that is whether or not the empirical data and the objective factual bases in the record support a determination that you could quantify a potential impact as, quote, significant, right? The issue is there something that we could support a quantification of an impact that you could say was significant? We went through various impact areas or areas of concern that we could at this point to show that the record demonstrates that from a quantification and quality standpoint, there would not be a significant adverse impact associated with this project. Let me go through where some of the topics that we've talked about. The first topic that we spent some time on is project benefits. I'll bring up the site plan, but first step to note is this is a privately owned site, and I think other people have said it will be developed one way or the other. It's not a conservation area. It's not a green field. There will be development here. Some of the benefits associated with this project over other developments that could occur on this site are no school children, no traffic, no demand on sewer, water. The typical concerns that you've been hearing a lot on residential projects, that doesn't happen with a solar development. Also, we made clear there is no battery storage proposal here. There was a misunderstanding, I think, on the DEP's side as to whether or not there's no battery proposed here. So in terms of fire EMS, this is not a problematic use. But what it does do is it does generate tax revenue for the town. And we submitted a fiscal analysis before. I won't go through that, but from a general benefit perspective. Additionally, there was a more specific question as to, well, does Yorktown need more solar? Where would this project actually benefit? We provided you with, and there are links in the cover letter, all the footnotes, links to all of the data and the sources that we use to prepare this, but ultimately giving you an idea of where this site is located within the electrical grid. It's located within the Buchanan network, and that's actually, the network itself is shown on the screen. We also put this in the submission, but the electricity that would be generated from this site would be going into the Buchanan network. Right now, the Buchanan network, which services portions outside the town as well as inside the town, Shrub Oak, Mohegan Lake, Compound, and Cortland Manor, which is right adjacent to the site, although I know that's not in the town. The peak demand in this network is 113 megawatts. So, top of the day when it's heat, that's typically what the demand is in that network. Right now, currently, that network only purchases or generates 12.75 megawatts within the network. The remainder of the electricity that Con Ed has to get, it must purchase from other generators outside the state, upstate, wherever it may be. We submitted some details from the EIE, the federal government's tracking agency for energy. New York State, the two majority generators of power, in which where Con Ed would be getting its electrons, is nuclear and hydropower. Now, nuclear used to come from, you can't see it now, but it used to come from Indian Point, because Indian Point was in this district. Now it's offline. And that's probably why you see the numbers now at 12.75, because the largest in-network generator has been taken offline. There are still nuclear power plants in New York, but they're way upstate. And there are still hydroelectric power plants, some ones in Niagara, a very big one. There are some closer, but they're far outside the network, which means that right now, Con Ed has to transport that electricity from far off locations. That's not efficient. That's not an efficient way of actually getting electrons to the homes within the network and the homes within the area, because the longer you transmit, the more electricity you're going to lose. It's just they may be buying, I'm making up numbers here, but say 10 megawatts, and they only get 7 megawatts down because they just lose it in transition. What that means is it's more costly for the people within the network, because they've got to, essentially those transmission costs are passed on to the consumer. And also it's more challenging. You don't know if it's always going to be there. So one of the benefits of community solar projects like this that would be tapped right into the Buchanan network is that Con Ed would have a source locally to serve up to about 550 homes within the network. The 3.125 megawatts generally serves about 550 homes. That's straight from the EIE data. You can all check it out. It's on the
How many homes are in the network?
Far more than 515. So 550. I could. I don't know if we have that online, but we could get you that. But a lot, certainly. And again, we're not saying that this one project is going to solve all the problems in the Buchanan network. Obviously, that's not the case. But the question was, is the electricity that's going to be generated at Jacob Road Solar going to somehow go elsewhere? Is it going to be taken by Con Ed and shipped downstate, upstate, everywhere else but Yorktown? The answer is very unlikely. One, because it's going to be a lot more cheaper to transmit it within the network. Two, because it's a community solar project, people using Con Ed within the network would have the option to say, I want you to purchase my electricity or a portion of it, whatever it may be, from that site. Which means that in the community solar program, you automatically get a discount on your bill because you're using local solar. It's between 5% and 20%, depending on income rates, et cetera. But also, the more of those local generators there are, the more options there are for the consumer. So, sort of a macro level explanation, but putting it to the micro, the benefit of this project is that it will be serving the local community.
I just have a quick question. How many homes in Yorktown are in that network?
Well, it covers portions of Shrub Oak, Mohegan Lake, Crampon, and then in the area. There's certainly more than 550 homes within the Yorktown side. I know this board has said before to me, the board doesn't just look at Yorktown, it looks at adjacent municipalities, it has to. So certainly within the area, like Cortland Manor and the homes there, that would also serve the community. So I can get you the number, I don't have it offhand.
I'd like
yeah.
that number, if it,
I
to see what that number is.
You can try. I mean, it depends. You have to kind of, you get what you get from Con Ed. So we've got a lot of good numbers on what's generated and what they need and where they purchase. Where it goes within the network, what individual house, it's not at that level, but we can try to see what we've got.
Can I just ask one question? I'm sorry. What were the two numbers, the peak number in demand and what they actually generate? Can you just reiterate that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, 113 megawatts is the peak demand. That's what's on the chart up on the screen. So you can see how the kind of demand goes up and down, given based on the hours, because the hours are below. Currently, 12.75 are generated within the
I don't
network.
have the AF.
There are more projects coming online. I think, what's the total number? I think it's like 32 or something like that. It's in the cover letter, so I didn't write it down. But there are others coming online because there are other. 21.5. Say whenever say 2026, 2027, whenever all those come online. So.
That'll be an additional 21.5 or a total of 21.5?
Plus 3.7. 21.5 megawatts cubed right now.
Queued. So that's in the queue.
Yeah, so plus 12.75
Yeah.
plus 3.3, you get into about the minimum, about 34.
34, right.
All right, thank you.
Okay. That was topic one. Topic two that we spent a lot of time discussing was habitat. Is there an impact to wildlife because it's a wooded area? Is there a significant impact to habitat within the site? We cited the EAF workbook, the DEC's workbook that it's prepared for lead agencies as they work through these issues. As any impact analysis must start, first you need to survey the existing conditions, right? So the existing conditions of the site, and what we're showing on the screen right now is the site is the little red area, and then the surrounding surrounding properties and surrounding area. So quantification has to start with a survey of the existing resource, right? So first off, the resource itself, and I think others have testified to this, it's an overgrown private farmland, right? It used to be a farm that then stopped being used as a farm and just was let to grow again. Again, it's a private property, so we're not talking about property that will be woodland or vacant forever. There is development that's going to occur on this site. Also, what has grown is they're not pristine, tree specimens, right? We've done a tree survey. A lot of invasives, a lot of overgrowth, and no endangered or protected species habitats. No areas of concern. The only concern that was raised is an Indiana bat habitat, because anywhere there are trees in the Hudson Valley, potentially dead trees, that's Indiana bat habitat, but there's already well-baked measures to ensure that there wouldn't be an impact, which is ensuring that you're not removing these trees at a certain amount of time. That is a measure that this board is required for almost any tree removal. I could tell you anywhere else in Westchester, anywhere else in the Hudson Valley, it's the same thing. But in terms of habitat, what actually uses this habitat, I think we even heard testimony during the public information session that it's a typical suburban species: deer, coyote, squirrels, skunk, etc. So then the question is, does the loss of that area for the coyotes and the other typical suburban species, does the loss of that wooded area result in an impact to their habitat that could be quantified legally as significant? And as you can see on the screen, what we did was we submitted the aerial showing the miles and miles of woodland area that's directly connected to the site or adjacent or nearby. And so in order to quantify the potential impact, you have to take into account that there's about 6.7 miles of wooded area where these types of species already use and could use, so that if you remove the trees from that area, is that a significant impact based on the rest of the habitat? Obviously,
Do you control that? The rest of the area you just referenced, is that under your control?
No, but most of it's conservation area. So you've got the Hunter Brook that leads right down to the reservoir.
Is this 4-acre zone out there? Current zoning?
R180. So no, is it 4? No, right? 2 acres. Thank you. Yeah. So the issue of quantification of saying, look, we're going to lose some woodland here. The question isn't just looking right at the site. The question is you have to look at the entire habitat. And so we submit from a secret perspective, that is also not a significant adverse impact. With respect to removal of trees, because that's the other sort of side of the coin. You're saying, well, look, you are still removing trees. And yes, there would be a different type of habitat on the site, right? We're not talking about, it's not going to be covered, because yes, there'll be panels elevated, and then there'll be grassland and et cetera underneath it. So there will be a different type of habitat. But to that point, people said, yeah, but what about the impact to removing of the trees? So there are 1,141 trees that are proposed to be removed. 85 of those are dead. 1,056. I think I did that the last time I said this too, but 1,056 are living. They would be replanting 782. So the question is, what's the impact associated with removing 274 trees? Right. We submitted a carbon sequestration study, and I know you've heard this until you're blue in the face, or I'm blue in the face, and you've heard me say it, but it is important because getting back to the SECRA legal standard of how do we quantify whether or not there's an impact, here's empirical data to determine what's the impact of the removal of the trees with respect to what their benefit is other than the habitat, right? So people are saying, well, what about the benefit of preserving trees from a sustainability and environmental perspective? There's certainly an environmental benefit to it, and that's why 782 trees are being planted to some extent. We submitted the carbon sequestration study using EPA standards, which is a standard methodology. Those trees right now sequester about 17.89 metric tons of carbon out of the atmosphere annually. The addition of the solar panels and that the renewable energy source at the site would remove 3,103 metric tons of carbon from the atmosphere every year. So it's an exponential increase in the amount of environmental benefit when you compare the trees to the solar to the solar panels and what they're doing from a carbon sequestration perspective. So again, yes, trees are being removed. It's just part of the project, right? When solar energy needs clear area and it needs sunlight. So of course you're going to have to typically remove trees. But just saying, oh, I'm removing a tree doesn't equate from a SECRA perspective into a significant impact, right? You have to be able to quantify that. And from a carbon sequestration and a habitat analysis, both from a numerical perspective and a substantive perspective, we respectfully submit does not support a quantification of this as a significant impact. Several other items that were raised. One was the decommissioning plan. There were questions about, okay, so you build this and now what? You know, they've got a 25-year life, and then what happens? Is someone going to come in and remove these? Your code and most codes in Westchester, New York State require a decommissioning plan to be provided as part of the project. So there would be a plan for removal and taking the panels off and all of the infrastructure off after the life of the project, about 25 years or so. 25 years. There was a question of, well, what would you do with the panels? Is it just going onto a landfill? And we summarized what is in the decommissioning plan. The answer is no. For the most part, most of the materials that are used on these panels can be reused, whether it be reused in another farm or another industrial use, but it's not going to end up in a landfill. The other question was, yeah, but how do we know you're going to do it? What happens if you know, we approve you, it's wonderful, and then we all just walk away and we don't see you in 25 years? The applicant is proposing, and I think your regulations require it, a decommissioning bond that would cover those costs. And what the applicant is willing to do is, if in, say, 5-year increments, the cost of decommissioning is going up because you know, construction costs go up, et cetera, that increasing the bond amount, that's fine. The issue is not to leave the town or the community with a defunct solar farm.
Is restoration part of it?
I believe it is in the decommissioning plan in terms of replanting it. Yeah. I mean, you know, a lot of it would be just leaving it in its natural state, or you know, replanting and then let it go. But yes, right.
Pursuant to your plan, who's responsible for that? The tenant or the landlord?
The tenant ultimately, right? Because the tenant is the permit holder. So the tenant would be posting the bond. The last piece on my list is the visual impact assessment, and we've already said we'll be back to you on that. Obviously, we want to wait. The one thing we did want to address after the public information session was the comparables. You know, there were several people that stood up and said, "Look, these things are ugly. Just take a look at, you know, this project or that project that's in the town." And what we wanted to do, we took some photos of some of the projects that were cited from, you know, public view sheds just to see the differences. And if you look at those projects, a major difference is the screening that we're proposing. None of those projects have the type of screening that we've been working through with your board, and the view sheds, and ensuring that from private property view sheds, it wouldn't be seen. This isn't going to be seen from a public road, right? As opposed to those projects which are somewhat visible. And yes, there's planting that will eventually grow, but remember, in this case, we're talking about planting trees at a certain height that will already block the views at day one. So when you're assessing visual impact and you're saying, yeah, but look at that one, that one's really ugly, all we're saying is it's not a comparable or a comp to what we're proposing from a visual impact perspective. We look forward to come back to you hopefully soon with an updated visual analysis, so you can also see that the project from certain private residential views will also be screened. But for now, for the purposes of when you're thinking about other sites, our only point is it's not, you're talking apples and oranges with respect to what this applicant is trying to do and willing to do with respect to screening and protecting view sheds.
Those are houses at the present time. Are there any new houses planned in the area that are going to be in a proximity that they may fall into sight?
of this? Well, we study those houses too, because the only houses that there would be is in the subdivision by the owner. And so, anybody who's buying a house there is gonna know that they're buying a house, that there's a project in the woods there. But yes, we also have worked on the screening on that side to ensure that views from those houses wouldn't be seen either.
I have a couple of questions for you. I was reading the Seeker workbook myself over the weekend. You've stressed.
Some light reading.
You've stressed. You stressed the benefits of this project. How are we to take those benefits as we go through the environmental review? What's your take on how that's supposed to impact what we're discussing?
Well, so benefits of the project, right, are taken into account during an EIS process. But I think what you're asking is at the determination of significance, right?
I'm asking you how we are supposed to deal with the benefits of the project as we consider the impacts of the project under the State Environmental Quality Review Act.
So the State Environmental Quality Review Act says you're supposed to balance the benefits versus the impacts, right? So if a project has various benefits but doesn't have a significant adverse impact, then you certainly can account for that.
And supposing a project might have an adverse impact, then how do you deal with the benefits?
You balance it.
I see. The workbook says, may an action with one or more significant adverse environmental impacts receive a negative declaration if there are balancing social and economic benefits? And the answer it gives is no.
No, you're exactly right.
Right.
That's what it said.
Is that what you're saying?
At the point of determination of the significance, I just said, right, you're asking about significance, not an EIS.
But that's where we're at.
Yeah,
in the process right now. We're determining the significance of this action, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So
benefits, we can set the benefits aside as we go through that discussion, right?
You could
Determining
the
the significance of the action, whether or not a POS or a neg deck is going to be issued, which is where we're at, I think now. We can set the benefits aside as we consider the answer to that question.
You can,
right?
You can. I disagree with the set the benefits aside. What I would say is this:
I don't have to consider
you're evaluating impacts and whether or not potentially significant adverse impacts. Adverse, right? So you're looking at adverse impacts.
Right.
You're determining whether or not there is evidence in the record.
Right.
Whether or not that would support a quantification of it as adverse or significant. That's the analysis now. That's right. Now, what I would say is you're also a planning board. So to say that, look, from a secret perspective, we're only going to look at the impacts. We're not going to look at the benefits. You know, that's not the charge of the board. Obviously, you're looking at benefits of any project as you go through the review process. But yeah, from a secret perspective, I can almost cite you the page. Is it 82?
That's close. What am I up to? Yeah.
I was right. 81. All right. Yes. It's a determination of adverse.
You're scaring us a little bit.
I know. Well, you guys challenged me, so I'm up for the game.
I have a question about something that's mentioned in the system monitoring. When you reference that the roadways will be fenced and sprayed regularly to prevent weed growth and ensure clear access for maintenance activities, what kind of spray?
This is the decommissioning. I'm sorry. This is the.
I'm sorry.
What?
I'm looking at the introduction. That I guess it's listed as page 4. The introduction for.
Their letter.
Wait.
No.
The operations, maintenance, and sustainability plan.
Oh.
You know what?
Operation Plan 4?
Right here.
Yeah.
You're having
What paragraph? Is it a number?
I'm looking at right here.
What?
1.4.2, or excuse me, 1.4. No,
2?
1.4.2.
Okay, I see it. Oh, you want to know what the weed? Okay.
Yeah, I want to know what they'll be sprayed with to prevent weeds, which presumably have something to do with things that grow.
Okay.
That's all.
Yeah, I mean,
Have it now, you can put it in, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, right, ultimately, if there was a concern about something, a chemical that would be used, then you could say
No,
you can't
I
use
just
it,
want to
yeah.
know what you're using.
We haven't selected any neighbors.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board at this point?
None here.
None.
John,
No questions at present.
Counselor?
No questions at this time.
Judy, you got anything else?
What you guys do.
All right.
All right, we'll see you soon.
To be
I
continued.
do have one other question. You have a lot of data and a lot of information here based on presumably track records in terms of existing solar farms that have been in existence for a certain period of time. What quantifiable data have you submitted and what time period has it covered on individual projects?
I think it would depend on the area of concern you are asking about. So for example, the data that we submitted on the Buchanan network is from the Con Ed site and from EIE, right? EIA, excuse me. I don't believe we haven't done there wouldn't be a traffic. We haven't done a traffic study, right? So I'm trying to think of what other data you're.
Well, I'm concerned about the decommissioning aspect of it.
Okay.
Because I don't know the life expectancy of those panels.
Oh, okay.
But I have serious questions as to the process to decommission, the impact of the entire decommissioning process on what's left behind, what the environment would look like, and also a fundamental question in terms of bonds, are they ever enough? And how would that analysis be updated to make sure that the value of that bond was there? Because otherwise, you're going to end up, if the operator runs out of money, or things don't cut the right way, or new technology comes in and something replaces this, you're stuck with something that has to be decommissioned by an operator who may no longer be in business, which would have it fall on what? The property owner, who would then eventually have it added to his tax bill that they wouldn't be able to, how would this play out?
That was the performance bonds. That's what we were talking about.
Right.
So the performance bond itself would be reviewed by your engineering, by your council
And
in the town.
hopefully it's enough.
But that's why we're saying we're willing to come back every year, 5 years, to update it if we need to. That if, say, technologies, I mean, usually technologies make it cheaper, but whatever. If technologies make it more expensive, that then the bond would be increased to ensure the concern that you have is, well, what happens if you walk away 20 years and, in the 25th year when it has to be decommissioned, there isn't somebody there to pay for it, you've got the bond. In terms of what would be left over, we can certainly go through that with you at the next meeting or go through it, but to show the features that we're proposing to ensure. I mean, if there are other approaches that the board wants to implement, we're happy to discuss it. It's not you're just going to be stuck with this.
The question would become, if, for example, if you were required to come back every 5 years to assess the bond situation, what if the operator can't come up with enough funds to fund the bond as the board deems appropriate?
Well, if that's the case, which is highly unlikely, then the project itself is going to have issues economically. But the town certainly has other enforcement mechanisms. It always does, right? And forget about solar. Any project, if it becomes an eyesore, there becomes problems, you can come in and enforce against the landowner. But in this case, you're talking about a lot of investment. You're talking about a qualified developer of these types of projects. That's why they're posting the bond. If you that's why you want the bond to be like usually like a 20% contingency to cover that. This is a
Have we
typical.
done incremental reviews of bonds in the others that we've approved?
No.
Periodic?
No,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
John, when was the last time the zoning changed in this area?
In 2010.
And have you analyzed the environmental review that was conducted when the zoning changed in this area to see if it comports with your analysis under SECRA as to whether there's an impact or not?
I'm not sure if I'm understanding your question, because that's typically not how secret reviews are undertaken. But if in 2010, the town evaluated potential impacts of a solar farm on this project, on this property, are you saying, have we looked at that? No, I don't believe it did, but,
The zoning was evaluated, and it was decided that the impact of any activity in that area was so extensive and so important that the zoning was changed to R180.
right, and solar is permitted in R180. So from a zoning perspective, that is, as the Court of Appeals says, quote, tantamount to a legislative determination that the proposed use is an appropriate use in that district. So from a secret perspective of, is this consistent with land use plans? The answer is yes, right? The courts are very clear on that one, that, look, if it's permitted by special permit, permitted in the district, then that is a consistent use. Going back to a secret study from 2010, I don't believe, I mean, John, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Robin, let me know if I'm wrong. I don't believe there was an analysis of this site as to what we're now proposing, but if there's any good information there, we'll take it.
There was no analysis at that time of solar installations.
Okay.
They didn't have the law.
Yeah, prior to all this.
No.
But there was an extensive environmental analysis at that time of that area.
Rezoning.
Yeah, which resulted in the change of zone.
That's correct.
I would think it would be worth looking at to see why that was done and see whether or not that's consistent with what you're looking at.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
See you
Have a
next
good
time.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me
Take
go.
care.
See you guys. Okay, number 6 was pulled off. Next, we have a ZBA referral, number 39-24, Pan Bar Realty. Locations 3301 and 3307 Lookout Street. How are you?
Hi, Lou Panny, Panmore.
We just need your name for the record.
Lou Panny.
Okay. So what is it you're looking for, Mr. Panny?
There's 2 residents, they own 2 lots, and in their backyard, they have 2 half lots, which is their septic systems. They want to go onto the sewer system, so we propose to tie them into the sewer system and then purchase the lot from them to build the house on it.
So lot 22 is owned by lot 21?
Half of it, yeah,
Okay, and lot 20 is owned by lot 19?
yeah.
So there are 4 separate lots, and you're looking to, and 20 and 22 are existing or separate lots?
Yes,
You're looking to, and they're looking to remove the septic systems off these 2 lots?
yes,
And then create a separate building lot?
correct. It used to be, 10,000 square foot area for the neighborhood there.
Right.
But because the septics were failing, they expanded it to 20,000. But now that there's sewer, it necessarily could go back to 10.
No, I'm talking to myself, I guess.
You're starting to
It's
scare me.
bad when you answer yourself. Yourself is okay. You can't answer yourself.
Any concerns from the board?
No, not here.
No, I think we should, I don't see any planning issues here. This is consistent with the lots in the neighborhood already, and,
They're accessing from Hollywood. Yes.
The new house that's proposed, is it any larger than any of the other houses that? comparable to all the homes in the area. Yeah, we're not Milton and McMansion, you know.
Well, some of the lots are 20,000 square feet, is that correct?
Some of them, well, most of them are 10,000, but they own the other 10,000 lot next to them. So,
Right, and under the law, they're supposed to, if that's the case, they're supposed to combine the lots
but it
in
used
order
to,
to
yeah,
comply.
it used to be emerging law, but I don't think that
No,
they,
there's emerging law.
they still
It's in-
require it?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's there.
So you're saying they need to combine, each of them has to combine with
Well,
the backyard?
That's what's in the law, that if you are undersized and you own two lots, you're supposed to combine them to get as close to compliance as you can, so. So,
No,
I think that
they're creating three substandards.
yeah, you're creating three substandards, and so you're making two even further substandard, because now they have 15. They're going to 10. And then if you look at the area map, you'll see two lots just to for the purpose of the map, is south of the septic lots. Those both look like 20,000 square feet. So that, these types of actions begin to set up a de facto zoning change in the neighborhood. So that's what's under consideration in terms of planning. It's an old neighborhood, yes, it started out as 10. I would guarantee it probably started out as 5 in some instances. And for a long time, it didn't have sewer, so obviously, it was, at least in part, we could surmise that it went to 20,000 square feet to accommodate septics, although even today, I don't think it would. But I would venture to say that it's, in terms of lot size and that type of character, it's mixed. And secondly, the road network, I think, shows its age by being probably substandard as well. So those are the kinds of considerations. Same thing that we grapple with on the Front Street area, up on the hill, in some of the older neighborhoods. So.
We know who owns Lot 12? Or is it, are we just sort of assuming it's attached to 11?
Where's, oh,
Right next door.
I see it.
50 Mile Road.
I was just on the wrong map.
This one and this one.
Yeah.
It looks like it's the same owner, 11 and 12, because it shows 3316 Hollywood Street in both. So it's probably a similar situation, where they had the septic on that.
I don't know. Would it help to look at it? I don't know. I haven't been there.
Are they requesting anything that hasn't been done in that area?
Yeah, do we know how many?
We've had one or two of these already.
Yeah.
I mean, on referral.
At what point do we turn around and say that we can't do what we allowed the neighbor to do?
Do we know how many people are hooked up to the sewers?
Well, that whole area is probably sewered.
Well, these people are still on the septics.
They are,
Yes.
yes, but I'm saying that whole area is probably tied in by now.
It's there for them, yeah.
Yes. My point is, if this has happened, obviously in other houses that are neighbors and next door, how do we not allow it to happen here? We've already allowed it to happen to next door.
Well, we're not making the final decision, of course, so.
No, I can understand that, but we're
Suggestion
looking,
is, are there any factors that we want to bring to the zoning board's attention from our perspective, as John was talking about, that we want to send back a memo to them on? Which could range from an outright, yeah, we endorse it, we don't see any problems, to one where we say, look, it's creating three substandard lots, which is against the intent of the law already.
yeah, but here comes my question again. How does it become substandard if we have allowed other people, neighbors, to do it?
They got variances then.
Were there variances?
That's the question, in that if you allow them, based on the fact that, only based on the fact that they're sewers, then why is not the zoning changed? And is it appropriate to change the zoning back to 10,000 square feet in all of the issues of today? That's the question.
Do we know what
Because you're right, once you do these over and over again,
Yeah.
you end up in that situation.
Do we know when the zoning was changed?
I don't know
That
exactly, I think it
goes
was
way back.
80s maybe.
Do we know if the sewer system that's in place was there when they did the upzone?
It was not.
No, it wasn't.
So could the upzone of the zoning be to accommodate homes with sewers rather than, or with septics rather than with sewers? If the area was smaller lots and obviously sewers weren't there, the septics are getting larger and larger for each of these older parcels. So the requirement for Westchester County would have been a larger area with backup and all that. If they upzoned it because of that, and I guess it's so long ago that we might not know, was that because of that? And now that there's sewers in there, you don't need that, so that area of
Well, should,
land for.
right, right, and so the other issue is, in our 20,000 square foot zones, that is not R110 with 20, but the R120,
Yeah.
a lot of them, in fact, most of them are sewered. Should they be rezoned down to 10,000 square feet? I mean, do you open up that? That's the kind of
It's a
long-term,
density question
that's the long-term planning
issue
issue.
for us.
What are the factors that, and I forget, I shouldn't, but the factors that the ZBA looks at in order to make a determination?
I think they look at the balance of the public good
Or-
against the detriment to the applicant and vice versa. Certainly, I don't think there's a hardship here.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about those types of things.
Right.
Well, the hardships to the people that own the property now, because they want to get on the system, and they can't afford to, and we're giving them a way to get on the system. So there is a little bit of a hardship to those owners, just to be fair.
The hardship we're talking about, though.
What's that?
That's not the hardship that goes into zoning board variances.
It's an expense to them to have to get onto the sewer.
I understand.
And if their septics fail,
Yeah.
True.
The thing
Have they failed?
have they failed? Not that I know of. But if a lot of those houses there have failed over the years, that's the reason why they put the sewer in there. Because they were smaller lots and the septics couldn't handle it. So,
The land, and Dan's back there, but the land area for a new septic is much larger than it was, it's incredible how much area you need.
you also have to remember, some of those houses were built, they didn't even have bathrooms, they were outhouses. This is stuff going in the 20s,
Some big,
So-
there's larger lots around them. Here, and there. Next page. This one.
Rezoning that we spoke of on the last applicant, or in regards to the last applicant, was done pursuant to the comprehensive plan, which was, and a lot of what was driving that rezone and the comprehensive plan was the prospect of population growth and growth. And there was a lot of consideration for traffic, environmental concerns, so on and so forth. So, I mean, that all ties in with this discussion in certain respects. The comprehensive plan was limiting growth, a lot of limiting growth aspects to it.
What are you thinking?
Looking at the surrounding areas, I see some larger lots around this property.
Yeah.
Not all substandard. Or
Any planning concerns?
all the things John
Yeah.
talking about, density, traffic. town board made policy decisions as to where they want to go with this, in effect.
Counselor, any guidance?
I agree with everything that John has said, and I think that you should include those topics in the memo that you send back to the ZBA.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, so we'll work up a memo.
Okay.
All right?
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Have a nice
Good
night.
Oh, tobacco.
Yeah, what I do with my sheets?
Here.
Oh. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, next but not least, the town board referral. This is chapter 300 tobacco. This is a proposed local law to amend the town zoning code in order to restrict where tobacco and related products may be sold.
So the only comment I have on that law is that it reflects a distance, a setback distance from certain kinds of institutions, and I think using the word church, unless it's defined someplace else, is too narrow.
We've already, we're already in the process of correcting that to
Good.
religious institutions or something to that effect as far as language goes.
That's
Yeah.
the one we happen to get, so I
Are you
just,
gonna include schools in that?
yeah, they did.
Yeah, it's 1,500, I believe it's 1,500 feet from schools, and it lists a whole bunch, and then there's restrictions on advertising, signage, that kind of stuff as well.
Is this zoning specific? Is this limited to certain zones in the first place, which they can do this?
Well, they,
I mean, it's a commercial business, yeah.
yeah, so it would be allowed in the commercial zone.
But then it has, within the commercial zone, you need the distance
You need the distance from
setback.
almost everything.
Yeah, pretty much. It's very limiting as, you know, as to where you'd be able to.
And I'm all for that.
No, I agree.
No issues.
No problem at all.
Yeah, there was, you know, there are some existing tobacco sellers. I think this exempts them.
It exempts them, but what we're talking about, there are two, you know, the law was mainly geared toward, you know, vape shops and, you know, selling, that kind of paraphernalia. It kind of floated into tobacco as well because of the way the law is written with the state, from what I understand. Yeah, so like a gas station selling tobacco, they would be exempt, and there are two existing vape shops in Yorktown now. They would be exempt.
Vape shops or tobacco shops?
Really? They're tobacco / vape, you know, because e-cigarettes and stuff like that have tobacco, you know, so it's kind of like you.
And they would be exempt.
They would be exempt. I believe that's what.
If they're properly licensed. then-
Correct. They would be exempt, and if they attempted to move or something like that, they wouldn't be able to do that. Their current location.
What do you think?
And unfortunately, there's one right on Main Street, right down the street from Tom Thumb. So
That's right. Yeah.
All right.
that's where one is.
I don't think
No planning objection?
No.
No.
All right, that's the last on the agenda. Do I have a motion to close?
Motion. Second.
Aye.
All those in favor? Thank you very much. Have a good night.
This one's yours.